Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's Coworking Values podcast. My name is Jack, and I'm just about to introduce this week's episode, and it's a special one. It's a recording of the latest Coworking Idea Project video that they have up on their YouTube, and they allowed us to use it in our own episode with the Coworking Values podcast. So, the Coworking Idea Project is an international collective of coworking operators and associations, community organizers, and collaborative consultants, and they're committed to making coworking a more inclusive, diverse, equitable, and accessible. So in this video, Jerome and Shervonne, so sorry about that, probably not the best pronunciation, share their thoughts and experiences advocating for more diversity and representation among speakers, experts, and panels at industry events, and provide small but meaningful actions we can all take to initiate change. So enjoy yourselves, and talk to you next week in the new Coworking Values podcast episode.
So welcome to the July 2021 Coworking Idea Challenge. If you are new to the Idea Project or to these monthly idea challenges, welcome. We are an international collective of coworking associations and operators, community organizers, and collaborative consultants, and we are working to make the coworking industry more inclusive, diverse, equitable, and accessible. Each month, we issue a challenge to the coworking industry, and we invite you to join us as we learn together and make small but meaningful changes to ripple out in our community. This month's challenge is about diversity, representation among speakers, experts, and panelists. So my name is Jerome Chang. I'm based out of Los Angeles, and this is Shervonne, and you are based out of Baltimore. So my co-working space is Blankspaces, which started back in 2008, which makes me one of the older veterans in this industry. Shervonne?
So I'm Shervonne Cherry. I'm based here in Baltimore, Maryland. I'm an entrepreneurial ecosystem builder and the national director for Spark Coworking, a collaborative coworking community on the East Coast and the Midwest.
Yeah, I should also add that I am a practicing licensed architect to this day, and I have some private clients, including fellow owners in the coworking and executive suites industry. But I also co-founded back in 2011 a co-working organization called League of Extraordinary Coworking. That stands LEXC.co. It's a network of boutique co-working brands where the owners are like-minded and we share best practices. So, Shervonne, let's get this started.
Yeah.
What is the idea for this idea project this month? And what challenges are important to you?
As humans, I think we greatly underestimate and really, to be honest, take for granted the value of representation. Just like the subtle nature of seeing yourself in spaces and places is just extremely powerful to Brown, Indigenous, and people of color communities and our allies. Me personally, coming from a decade of working in the technology industry, I've spoken on many panels, I've been to many conferences. So I'm very aware of a little bit of the tokenism and the last minute quotas that tend to pop up. I've been approached very last minute because someone along the lines have noticed that they have a manel, an all male panel, or a WANL, an all white panel. And they're like, oh, wait, we need to add something else in there. I really want to make sure that we're shifting away from that mindset that, including voices of all backgrounds and all experiences is not an afterthought of, you don't have to go to the same well over and over and over again to get really great insight and experiences to share with your communities. There are individuals and organizations within the co-working ecosystem that you may not even realize exist who can really share some really great thought leadership. So really enlightening and educating the ecosystem on reaching out to folks of all backgrounds.
Yeah, for me, the co-working industry has always been a focus on community. And I think the co-working industry, along with some social media, was really what drove what we now consider standard, these titles called community managers. But for all this focus, who is co-working actually including? And does that include gender diversity? Does it include ethnic diversity? Does it include background diversity? It's a catch-all phrase, this community. And then the second part for me, why this challenge is important to me, is that these communities really have two basic roles. We have the leaders and the followers. And like the old saying, chicken versus egg, which are affecting the other. So this challenge is hopefully will focus on the leaders or the influencers who are panelists, moderators, speakers, and let's see if we can affect the followers.
And I'm glad that we're emphasizing, and with the wording co-working leaders, it's not meant to be like this hierarchy of these are the more important people in the movement. It's not that at all. These are the folks that I kind of call front of house. They're the ones who are very external, very front facing, to individuals who are just learning what co-working is, are still sort of discovering this community and ecosystem. So those are the ones that tend to get a lot of face time. So in the terms of this conversation, that's how phrase co-working leadership.
Right. And so what are some of these issues that we've identified in the co-working industry for you, Shervonne?
Oh, man. Where should I start? I would say, industry organizations just recognizing or even just embracing diversity of co-working thought leadership. Many times I hear, well, I didn't have the time because, as you very well know, Jerome, time is of the essence in what we're doing. We wish that we could clone all of ourselves. I have curated events and panels and summits where curating speakers is go, 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 trying to find the right thought leadership. And a lot of times, diversity of thought, diversity of experience often gets put on the back burner. So I think many organizations lack the drive, the time, and sometimes it's even just the flat out desire to find diverse voices for their panels, events, workshops, etc. So unfortunately, that in turn creates this illusion of, or with truth, of a whitewashed ecosystem. So for those who are looking into the co-working community and co-working space, they're not realizing there's a whole community, a whole ecosystem of very diverse voices and diverse experiences. They're not seeing that or experiencing that, because the same voices who are not of color, who are not women, are not getting put out there more in the forefront. So that's one of the issues that I've identified.
Totally agree. And focusing on the leaders, the leadership, the leaders, the influencers, and such. There's definitely a lack of diversity among the panelists and moderators, speakers at these co-working events. But similarly, but maybe a little less so, are the attendees. And so there it is do the leaders affect the attendees, or the attendees drive which leaders or influencers do speak? And I can give you two reference points. One is there's a event-driven company, now media company, called BizNow. It's BISNOW. They're national. They're also localized in every city. And I've taken a look at a bunch of their marketing collateral the last few months, and every single one of them has diversity of both ethnicity and gender. Whether or not it has other diversity, but at least on the surface, though, that's what caught my eye every single time. And they cater to a pretty traditional, conservative, and not usually known to be a very progressive or current industry, the general real estate industry at whole, and they're able to do it. So if they can do it, I think our co-working industry that focuses on community, not even real estate, should be able to do it. The other reference point I have is staffing. And I was speaking to a few of my co-working colleagues the other day, and I would say in general, I saw diversity or diverse ethnicity amounting to be about somewhere between 15, 20% of their current staff, whether they're 10 people or 100 people. And, I've been somewhere between 10 and 15 employees over the last couple of years. And I would say that we are about 60, 65% every single time. And honestly, I don't even try to hire for diversity. So the question is there something that's self-perpetuating? I think it is, at least on our end, is that without trying, we have self-perpetuated continued diversity, because when we show, for example, on our website, the members of our team, other prospective recruits, applicants, they see that and automatically are drawn to our diversity and continue to add to our diversity. We honestly don't even think about it. In that way, it's great because it's become innate. But for those people who have to kind of get to that level first, so it is self-perpetuating, what do you have to do? And that takes a lot more conscious decisions so that you don't have to think about it.
Yeah. And I think, and to your point, being a BizNow innovator, because I was named a BizNow innovator, and I was pleasantly surprised when I went to their website and I saw that there were people in conversations that looked like me and looked like our demographic of members here at Spark. And, going back to the representation, you hit the nail on the head, from your staff to your, to what your social looks like, to the topics that you're talking about. When it's baked into your ecosystem, when it's baked into your organization and your space, it becomes very natural and very not forced. Because on the flip side, I think we've both experienced this. What happens when it is forced? It's very disingenuous. It's just this added sort of sprinkle on top of the last minute. And I won't say it's just not done well, but it's just sort of like, you don't really care about your membership, because at the end of the day, if you're not caring about the message that you're putting out there and the visuals and the representation that you're putting out there, you don't care about your client. And in turn, if you don't care about your client, you really don't care about your business. And you're just sort of spinning wheels. And I think a lot of organizations are really going to see this coming down the pipeline. I mean, the past 15 months has been life-changing for the entire globe. And just like you and I, our organizations or members are really going to see the impact of this coming down the pipeline.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting takeaway, that this pandemic has literally put the biggest pause globally. And between George Floyd and Black Lives Matter movement, the rise of anti-Asian hate, rise of anti-Semitism, list goes on and on and on. Yeah. Now Olympics with proper equity. There's gender pay equity with women's soccer players, and that's just symbolic of many other industries. I think that pause should have compelled more people to look in the mirror. I mean, literally in the Zoom call, there's already a gender inequity that I read about, how many women feel more self-conscious because they see themselves as the image in the Zoom camera. But if you're in a meeting, you don't see yourself, and in Zoom you do. And now you feel more self-conscious. And so literally we're in Zoom here looking at ourselves and saying, do we represent something that we're proud of? And what am I doing on my individual part to contribute towards that better world?
And that's a great segue into, so how do we want to change things?
Right.
I know, Jerome, you have many amazing ideas. So do you want to tackle this one first?
Sure. So I listed 5, I think, pretty realistic actions for people to do, and you can take any of them or all of them. And so the first one is to have folks who frequently speak or moderate. I have been one of those, at least in the past, to commit to or insist to the organizers to have diversity. And a step further would be to not participate if that diversity is not there. So you have an option out. Second is to provide these common speakers and panelists with scripted requests and responses, so that they don't have to come up with a reason that doesn't seem authentic or doesn't seem appropriate for the audience that we have, which are organizers. So a scripted response and a scripted request at the same, for both. Then also refer other industry colleagues who can better represent diversity. Every one of us knows another person who could contribute similarly or even better, but they just didn't have the opportunity, which is no different than if a school district is trying to hire the first principal of color. But when you look at the history, maybe there weren't statistically the same number of opportunities for that person with that background. And so it's about giving that person a chance. The fourth one is to contribute to a public list these suggestions of other diverse colleagues. And also then finally, to have these same folks pledge public statements of commitment. So just run them down, 5 simple things. If you already speak at these panels, insist to organizers to have diversity, and then don't participate if they don't. Second is provide these panelists scripted requests and responses. Refer other industry colleagues who can better represent diversity. Number 4, contribute to a public list. And number 5, have these panelists make public statements of commitment to pledge their commitment to this challenge.
It's the general accountability. It's making sure that we're keeping individuals accountable. And I think a lot of people will sort of listen to this and say, "Oh, you're going to slap us on the wrist or tell us." This is a helpful resource. Like, we are trying to do rising tide society right now. We want to make sure that we're elevating and supporting, and with our personal experiences, Jerome, and with the community, bringing that collective support to these organizations who, whether they realize it or not, need the help. And I think the first step is recognizing that there's an issue, right? There's a problem that needs to be addressed. And part of that, is also having just an open discussion with these organizations. I think a lot of times there's a fear that there's like a bait, that we're trying to bait them into saying something. And you and I have had many conversations about this with many of our industry colleagues, and we just want to see a change. We just want to see ourselves. We understand and want to make sure that they're seeing what we're seeing in our ecosystem of co-working. So I really appreciate those 5 really achievable steps that you've laid out here. It's really great.
So you had a couple of bullet points. What were those?
So I was really echoing everything that you're saying. Like, yes, this is great. I love it. Another thing that I really want to see, just a small tangible step, is just extending speaker curation timelines. A lot of the times I hear from folks is, "Oh, I didn't have time. I really had to rush to find people. I just had to fill in this. So I went with so-and-so." Well, easy fix. You can, if you extend your timeline, give yourself a bit more time to really make sure that you are spending the time to find diverse voices. If you use the same speaker over and over and over again, and they're your go-to, great, you love them. But there may be 3 or 4 or 5 other individuals out there that can really give some great insight that is going to better your content, that's going to be more available and more connecting more with all of your client types and members and folks that are digesting this content. The other thing, and like I mentioned, is just having that open discussion and not making it something that comes up from February 1st to February 28th, or comes up during Pride Month, or comes up during this isn't something that we have to talk about during a very small segment of the year. This is something that is 365 is 24/7. It's something that's just a conversation that has to happen, because diversity isn't just this, "Ooh, I checked off diversity." We're living this every day. These are our lives. This is real life. And it needs to be addressed and not checked off as something in your marketing plan. So recognizing that these are conversations that are, and having an open dialogue is really key to our goal for this challenge.
About a few years ago, I don't know what prompted me to do this, but when I was at a co-working conference, it was in the range of 300 to 500 attendees. And I literally went out around the room and counted the number of Asians in the room. There were maybe one handful. But then when you subtract out the significant others, and then just isolate down to the people who are there because they own or operate a co-working space, it was me plus maybe 2 other people. Mm-hmm. I mean, my God, and I repeated that process. This was a little self-experiment. I repeated that process for the next several years, and it was exactly the same. It was never more than 3 or 4.
I don't think many folks realized the natural process when, I know at least for me as a Black woman going into spaces, automatically, my brain just does it, right?
I know, you walk into a room and then you go like this.
Yes. And it's like, oh, there's one, it's this weird
There's
sort
a
of
sighting
like,
over there.
yes. And then there's that, and we all see it. It's that eye contact across the room of, hey, I see you, you see me, it's one of those. And I don't think that experience and that sort of self-awareness shapes our reality every day. So bringing some of that experience and knowledge of this is just something that is in tune to our everyday experience. It's not just the color of our skin, it's our whole psyche, it's our whole persona, is going to be really important. So I kind of want to dive into what exactly are we challenging people to do? This is the core of the challenge. And do you want me to take a stab at these, or do you want to dive in?
All you.
There's a few short things here. Number one, diversify your events, your experts, your speakers. This doesn't just mean visually. It's from age, language, religion, gender identity, sexuality, immigration status, body size, perspective, life experience, industry role. A lot of people tend to go straight for that C-level, or they tend to go who they think is the director or leader of an organization, which has happened to me before. But it's really diversity isn't just skin color, and just really educating and understanding that. Number two, contribute, nominate, and utilize the collaborative list that we're going to be sharing during this process. There are no excuses to this. We hear a lot of excuses every day when we have been working through this project, and we're trying to establish resources and opportunities that there will no longer be excuses for this issue. Number three, so take the pledge to only speak on diverse representative panels, sponsor or attend events that are diverse and gender balanced. This may be tough. I know it's really exciting when you're asked to be on to speak on a committee or a board or a workshop or conference. But before accepting, maybe just dive in and ask those questions of what does the rest of your speaker makeup look like? Who are your sponsors? Who are the attendees of the event? Is the event even accessible from a cost-wise to allow to be opened up to a more diverse group of attendees? Number four, use your money, support diverse conferences. I know there is the big heavy hitters, the one we constantly see that have the big marketing budgets to have lots of ad space and sponsor different events. There are lots of other small, diverse conferences within the world of flex workspace and co-working that we just don't hear about because they don't have the marketing budgets. So dive a little deeper, use your money to really support those diverse conferences who historically have diverse voices. Fifth one, ask organizers to commit to representative panels and events, and just let them know we don't want manels. We do not want WANels. Those are all male or all white panels. If you tell them, they will listen, especially if you're an ally in this challenge or for people of color. I think a lot of people underestimate the power of their voice. I think this past year, there have been a lot of, as I like to call it, melanin challenged individuals who really took for granted the power of their white voices. And or individuals who are in places of power. And if you're just going and saying to these organizations, we do not want to see panels that are all a monolith or homogeneous, there will be more ears to listen. Number six, emailing event producers in advance of the event. So if you know that there's a concern on the location or spaces or places or what's happening, the rumor mill doesn't really help a lot, but if you're emailing and having those conversations, having those issues and concerns put on paper or digital paper via email, that's a record. That's acknowledgement that you have shared your concern with those organization leaders. So if they come down the pipeline and say, well, no one told us anything, the concerns were voiced. And lastly, share your thoughts publicly on social media, within your own circles. You know what? Sometimes being nice isn't the way to go, the path to go. I like to call Jerome as, I'm sort of like the nice, if nothing happens, and I bring Jerome in to kind of, we're both nice, but sometimes asking nicely and coming with honey and maybe it doesn't work, but what does work? Public pressure. Money talks. If organizations realize that they're losing revenue or people are not coming to their events, they will quickly change their tune to a lot of those things.
Yeah. So then how can we measure this impact? How do we know if we're making a difference? Well, this list that we will publish will grow. And I think when you see the growth of this list, that is one of the measurements. I think everyone will be both surprised, but also not surprised at the list of names you might have just forgotten. You haven't seen in a while, or they haven't had much visibility recently. When I first started back in 2008, I remember that during that 2008, 2011 era, where I think some of us kind of, we all got on certain national press, because when you were only dealing with maybe 2 or 3 dozen co-working spaces in that first couple of years, we actually had the opportunity to talk to Wall Street Journal, to New York Times, these big guns. Now it's much harder because you have to be a much more unique or bigger player now. But back then, that was really, one of the greatest opportunities I had in co-working, and probably the only reason why I have some visibility today, because I started early and I had those opportunities. But with a more crowded field now, it's a little harder, but at the same time, the supply of talent, the supply of diversity is there if we look and we open our eyes. So that's one, the collaborative list. These events are getting more diverse, and I believe the organizers definitely know about this and either need a little more nudge, or maybe this is the year to do it, because it just makes more business sense. I've never organized events to the extent. I'm sure you and I have organized 50 and 100-person events. It's much smaller. But as I said, just with like staffing, some of it can be self-perpetuating if you practice it enough so it becomes innate. The third item is people are using and adapting the templates that we'll provide and use it for their own use. And so that will evolve on its own, and will, every person will put their own voice, their own authorship into the versions of this template. Maybe there will be stronger stances. Well, there will be some more boycotting of events that don't have diverse speakers. Maybe that the whole conference itself, or maybe specific events at a conference. And then that people are just generally speaking more openly in support of diverse and representative speakers, panels, and events. So that's how we can measure it. Part of it will take time to see those impact, and others will be just black and white on a list, easy to see.
Getting into the sort of the meat and potatoes of the challenge, we went through a lot of things here, but so what resources are we providing people with? So we have the tools, we're gearing up, here they are. So we're going to be building out a collaborative list over the month of July. So as we are taking this challenge ourselves, this is not just for you, this is holistic, this is community whole. The list will be available for everyone to contribute to and utilize of those speakers and thought leaders of diverse backgrounds. We'll also have links to our blog post, which will house that growing list of diverse speakers and experts. Will be easily accessible. We'll also create templates for responses when you're invited to speak or when you're invited to sponsor events that may not be diverse, and you maybe want to find the words or have some support there in expressing your viewpoint on they're not providing a diverse space. And then we'll also be providing a checklist. What are the things to look for when you're looking to attend an event? What are the things to look for when they're asking for your sponsorship that we can call out that you can utilize during this time period as well with those resources?
So is this challenge specific to co-working or more in general? What's your take, Shervonne?
I mean, this specific challenge is obviously co-working focused. We are co-working leaders. We're trying to make sure we're making a shift within our industry, but it is absolutely something that can be adapted from a general standpoint. This is not an industry specific problem. This is local, regional, national, global. So it's something that can be used with many different industry types.
Anything else you want to highlight or share?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say, the co-working industry really needs to recognize that it's not sheltered or immune from passive racism. And I think a lot of people tend to think racism, they think of these very violent, harsh situations. And passive racism is happening every day, all day in the communities that we live and work. I think the word community is so saturated in our verbiage, in our ecosystem, that it's sort of like, organizations and individuals are just, on the go, forgetting that community also includes other communities that may not look like yours. And that's part of the full ecosystem that co-working is. I just want people to recognize that.
Yeah, there's always a constant debate in co-working about, is this a real estate business or perhaps a hospitality business? And we always focus on community. So let's just reframe it a little bit. This is a people business. But are you recognizing all the people who could be in your business? So
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us today. I hope you will take this month's challenge. All the resources we've mentioned can be found at www.coworkingidea.org. And that's also where you can find the link to register for the International Idea Conversation at the end of the month, where you can join us to discuss this topic and experience taking the challenge. We look forward to seeing you there.
See you there.